Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. Today is May 22nd at noon Eastern. I would like to welcome you back to our ongoing series called Conversations with Tech Leaders Shaping the Future of Canada. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome back David Markwell to this conversation. David Markwell is the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology and Analytics Officer with Loblaws Group of companies. Very, very well-known, regarded leader in Canada. I'm very, very thrilled to have you back. David, thank you very much for your time. I know how intense your schedule must be. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being back. It's been a couple of years.
It has been a couple of years, indeed. You were, I think, one of our first guests when we started this series, right on the sort of the back end of COVID shutdowns. So I really, really look forward to hearing sort of what's new with you. For our audiences who are joining us, this is a live conversation. So please, number one, bear with us if there are any technical challenges. And number two, this gives you a chance to submit any questions you might wish to submit. So please, using the Q&A function of this platform, please feel free to engage in this live conversation. We will record the session, and I will be posting the session link later on both LinkedIn, and I will be, of course, including it in our regular mailing. So with that, let's get going. As you know, I typically do not do not go through a bio and introduction myself, because I really, really prefer to hear the story right from the source. So David, the first question really is if you would be so kind to share with us your story, how you navigated your life and your career to now be at the helm of technology and analytics, and I know other things as well with a Loblaws Group of companies.
Okay, sure. I mean, it's a long story, and
That's
I know I've told this
right.
before, but I think, I'll touch on a couple of key points. I think, I have a favorite quote. It's from John Bon Jovi, and it's like, write down your future, but do it in pencil. I think you have a general plan of where you want to go, but, things happen along the way. It's funny, how did I get into tech? Well, actually, going all through high school, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And that was until I did my grade 13 co-op, back when they had grade 13. I did it at Wellesley Hospital, and that taught me that I didn't want to be a doctor. And so I ended up studying electrical and computer engineering at U of T. And it's sort of, between necessity and between, just a general passion and interest in technology, and technology being applied to solve business problems. I progressed, over the years from being a good developer. I thought I was a good developer, all the way through project management, and then program management, as you think about expanding your capabilities beyond just writing or applying tech in terms of delivering it. And then, for the last 17 years, and that seems like a long time now, I've been at Loblaws through a series of, progressive executive positions, mostly in technology, some business or and roles. When you said my title, I have a lot of ands, so I often take up, special projects. And I've always had the approach that I just try and be useful and helpful, and, sometimes go and solve problems that might be a bit dicey, and others might not be that interested in. I always see a bit of a passion. I have a passion for solving those kinds of problems. And I guess a few other things along the way. I've always tried to take a business lens, to technology, and sort of understand where it is we're going, or where we need to go, and try and fit, solutions, against somewhere. There's always horizons you're working on, but trying to look ahead. And also being, as you progress, in more senior positions, you go from doing work to building leaders, and that's certainly a big passion for mine. And along the way, I've tried to have a good balance with work, with family. We were talking before we started about, some education, and I've done certain degrees over time while I've been working, and hobbies. So, I think it's about, like I said, trying to be useful, trying to solve problems, and add value, and then, find a good balance,
Find a
as
balance to
you
keep it
as you
sustainable.
as you navigate through your life.
Yeah. I love the quote that you started with. I actually wrote it down. I'm going to steal it if you don't mind.
Sure.
Write
It's
down
not
your
mine. Like I
future.
said, it's from the 90s, baby. It's Bon Jovi.
Yeah,
So
Bon Jovi it is.
and I read this other thing that you get, the music you grew up with in high school is the music that gets embedded, in
Oh, yeah.
your brain, right? So it's always the 90s for
You know what?
me.
That's actually absolutely true. Yeah, that's actually never thought of it that way, but you're right. That's very true. So David, as you reflect on this career, which is undoubtedly spectacularly successful, of course, this programming is intended for technology leaders, people who are curious and interested about technology leadership and enterprise tech as well. But as you reflect back, uh, what do you feel were the sort of most important moments or most important attributes that you think helped you sort of navigate to where you're at today?
Yeah, I think, in a lot of cases, like you said, there's lots of successes I can look back on and say, I was really, proud of the teams, or proud of, the outcomes that we achieved. I think, well, you always learn the most from when you aren't successful, right? Those are real learning moments. And
Yeah,
I think in technology, you get an opportunity to, see those probably more often than not. It could be projects that go awry, it could be changes or implementations that maybe, cause an unintended consequence. And, there are always, obviously from a cyber perspective, bad actors out there who are trying to, inflict damage on you, and your organization. So I think there's always this perspective that, you can look back at what you achieved and say, that was good. But like I said, you're really tested when things don't go well.
yeah,
And that, I think, builds itself in terms of, being a leader as well, how you manage through those situations, and how you manage yourself, and, try and keep a level head, and, manage your teams, and help your teams, recover from situations that maybe don't go as well.
yeah,
I think that's really what teaches you the most. And I have a good memory, and I have a long memory of all the things that, have not gone well. And in fact, you run that playbook, as you go forward, as you think about new initiatives, new projects, implementations, what could go wrong, managing risks. And I think it just builds your repertoire, as you take on more advanced and complicated initiatives, to not make the same mistakes
yeah.
again.
What jumps at me as I'm listening to you is the word balance. Is the word balance is what sort of jumps at me. You mentioned the balance between the work and cool projects you want to take, but also remembering what things went wrong and learning from those and bringing that into the perspective. And then you mentioned the importance of having hobbies and time for hobbies and time for personal and time for family. So what comes at me is that you come across as a very, very balanced individual in the way you approach your life and work. Is
Yeah, I'm
that
not
is that
sure. I'm
fair?
not sure certain people in my life would say that, but I mean, that's what I try to do. I mean, there's
Yeah,
there's how you see yourself, and then perhaps how others see you. I'm
yeah.
not sure that's always congruous in terms of how that all goes.
That's very fair. That's very fair. So, David, maybe we go to the next question. I'll be very curious if you wouldn't mind sharing sort of in your role at at Loblaws Group. Like, what is it that you do? Maybe if you could share some of the cool things that you and the team are working on, and perhaps even some of the challenges that you are, solving for.
Sure. I mean, we have, a lot of really important initiatives going on. One, as we try and, I mean, the customer is at the center of everything we do, and certainly from a healthcare perspective, the patient is at the center of everything we do, and we're, on a constant mission to, add more value, provide more value for customers, and whether that be, through digital means or through better experiences at store level. And we're certainly relentlessly focused on, things like price and value perception and convenience, and ensuring that, whether it's from an assortment perspective or, availability, the basics of retail run well, and our customers can get what they need when they need it, at a price that is valuable for them. So those are kind of like the fundamentals of retail, and certainly my team and I keep those top of mind. And how do we achieve those types of things? Well, we always manage a series or a set of initiatives that are geared to either improve one of our core business metrics or improve our cost to serve, which allows us to keep prices low and to continue to, provide solutions that benefit, our customers or our colleagues at store level or in pharmacies or in the distribution centers or offices. And, we're constantly, looking for ways to just make those experiences better. And, in the meantime, we're also ensuring that we manage our customers' data and our patients' data and our employee data, and consistent with, our privacy and our core values. And, we're also, guarding the organization from, external threats. From a protection perspective, we run all our critical systems, and making sure that our availability and resiliency of our systems is where it needs to be, and constantly trying to improve both the performance and the resilience of our systems, and working with our business partners on helping them achieve their strategic imperatives, right? And a lot of work we do is also around communication. Why are we doing certain things? Why are things changing? Why, what's going into this next release? So much of the benefit that's realized, whether it's by colleagues or customers through the systems that and processes that we provide, comes down to understanding, why things are changing, or how to use it more effectively. And that's, been a key focus for us.
I love that everything you mentioned is positioned as something that benefits the customer, something that moves our business metric forward. Like, there was no tech response in that response. It was a genuine business leader's response, who happens to oversee this important portfolio, which is, I think, great.
Well, I think it's been an evolution as well. I think it's something that, I've been personally challenged to, think in the language of the business. I think it's become more natural over the years. It's not to say we don't do a lot of things from a technology perspective, some fairly advanced initiatives. However, technology for technology's sake is interesting if you're, a tech company, or if you're a research organization. However, when you're, a low cost retailer with very low operating margins, like, everything you do needs to be measured against what benefit it's going to provide. And that leads to difficult choices, because oftentimes there are ways that we could solve problems that would involve, some fairly sophisticated but expensive tech, and we choose to solve it in let's say, a lower cost, lower tech capacity. And so, we're always trying to balance that with, what is the reality of our current, business environment, and how do we make sure that we deliver on, the mandate that's been asked of us, which is to be a key partner to our business units, and to help them achieve their outcomes, while we look after, all the things in the background.
And that's another very, I think, important thing to mention. Finding the right fit, finding the right vehicle for what is needed. Not everything needs to be on a truck. Not everything needs a Ferrari. It's a figuring out really the right balance. I love that you made that comment. So David, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, as a technology leader. We all know we went through this phase of a fierce competition for talent. That sort of seems to be subduing a little bit. I was wondering if, like, as a tech leader for a large enterprise, what sort of are the top things on your mind in terms of, you know, challenges and risk from a tech perspective that you are sort of zooming in and solving for you and the team?
Yeah, I mean, just commenting on what you said, I don't know if the you know, the war for talent or the need to continue to recruit, maintain, develop, retain talent, you know, will ever go away. I mean, it's you know, I have an amazing team, an amazing set of leaders, and you know, it's my job to make sure that they continue to be challenged, to feel engaged, you know, to see, you know, the purpose that's bigger than the department, right? What's the organization's purpose, and what's our role to play to, you know, achieving our strategy or our purpose of helping Canadians live life well from a Loblaw perspective.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of you know, where I see things going and, you know, my role, you know, I think it's important to be adaptable. You know, you need to think ahead. You know, you're always looking on, you know, ahead on horizons, and the more senior you become an organization, obviously the further you need to be looking out, right? You're part of the leadership team that sets the strategy of the organization. We're looking out, you know, 3 to 5 years. You know, the team itself, you know, from an annual planning or multi-year planning perspectives, looking out 2 to 3, and then the people on the ground are worried about what's happening, you know, next week, next month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of managing all three, because things come up, and or all three horizons, right? Things come up, and you know, you need to be, like I said at the beginning, willing to change your plan. You know, I think that's another lesson I've learned over time. I used to be pretty rigid about, you know, the plan is the plan, and we don't change the plan. The reality is things do come up, and you need to, you know, adapt the plan, right? Going back to that adaptability metric of trends, and not like, you know, you should try new technology or some of the, you know, emerging tech as it comes out, but I think you need to understand what problem is it trying to solve, or is it really, you know, a problem looking for a solution, and you're better off not diving into it, you know, and focusing on other things. I think that's important, but you need to be educated, right, to be able to make that kind of discerning choice around which ones you pursue and which ones you don't. And each of the emerging tech, you know, capabilities that are out there or have come and gone over the last number of years have you know, some have stuck and some have not, right? And you have to be careful from that perspective. And I think, you know, we've already touched on it, but I think just this, you know, concept of being a business leader first. You know, I think technology leaders can often get enamored with what it is they're trying to do and lose sight of why they're trying to do it. I just think that's an important piece. And then I already touched on it. I mean, developing people is like the number one thing.
Number one.
Right. And certainly, you know, as you grow up in an organization and become more senior, more and more of your time needs to be devoted to team and to culture and to, you know, developing the talent underneath you. And that just becomes so important.
Yeah. So I was listening to, sort of trying to sort of capture and summarize it. So this is what it sounds like to me. Number one, leadership development, making sure that people understand and are subscribed to the bigger picture beyond just their immediate work and department. So building leaders, number one. Number two is ensuring that there are multiple horizons planning in place, so that people who need to understand what they need to be focusing on immediately have that focus, but there is also clarity in sort of where we are going. But the third thing you mentioned, that plan has to account for some, you know, unplanned adaptability required. So adaptability would be a third thing that you mentioned. The fourth thing you mentioned is keeping pulse on technology trends and technology, again, emerging technology and understanding if and how it could be helpful. So keeping pulse on the trends. And then the fifth one, I would say, wraps it all up nicely, is remembering the big why, showing up as a business leader first, because that's the job, business leader first, and then technologist as the means to succeed as the business leader, kind of. Thank you.
We all bring different dimensions and skill sets to the table, right? But in the end, we're we're business leaders.
Yes, of course, of course. A couple of questions are coming from the audience. I'd love to ask you a couple of those, and
Okay.
I would encourage audience to keep bringing them up. One question specifically about, yeah, of course, in your business, you mentioned margins are thin. It's a very dynamic sort of competitive environment. How is technology leveraged to actually manage the understanding of the customer segments and customer sentiments? Can you comment a little bit on that?
Sure. I mean, we have, I mean, like I said, the customer is at the center of everything we do. We obviously capture through our PC Optimum program and other digital channels, and obviously from a point of sale perspective, what customers are buying, and how those trends are evolving.
Mm-hmm.
That forms the basis of some reasonable insight we get into segments of our customer base, and how those customers are thinking about their basket and acting on it. And there are other digital properties. We have PC Health, our various e-commerce websites like PC Express, where customers tell us information about themselves, and that helps us understand a bit more about what it is they need, they want, and then they tell us they vote every day with their wallets, and in terms of what they buy and what they put in their basket, whether that's online or in store. And that's meaningful to us because we see when maybe we're not as competitive as we need to be from a pricing perspective, or maybe we've introduced loyalty offers or promotions that the customers don't see value in or don't understand, right? We get that feedback in real time, and so then we adjust.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. So a couple of other questions. I'm sort of watching as they come. There was a comment about retail trends, and so I'm not personally in retail, so I'm just going to just say it. Might not be correct. That typically the comment says that retail trends historically were coming over from Europe. Is this still the case, or like where do you look to identify what are the emerging trends or best practices in your industry, both as a retail but also tech within retail?
Sure. I mean, I'll start from sort of how the retail industry is evolves. It's true. I mean, Europe is typically 5 to 7 years. I'll call it ahead or a head-on trend. That was true from an e-commerce perspective.
Yeah.
Canadians and North Americans in general, although Canadians lag our American counterparts from an e-commerce perspective, right? That had started in the late 1990s, especially from a grocery perspective in the UK and the continental Europe, and didn't become, something that was, at critical mass here until, 2014, 2015, that type of time frame. The big trend right now is ultra hard discount, and we have a competitive banner in No Frills that would rival any of the European hard discounters. And you see the proliferation of the Aldis and the Lidls across Europe and into the United States. And certainly that's a trend. Canadians demand value, right? It's tight, right, from an economic perspective, and we need to be ready to respond. So that's on the business side. I mean, I would say that's generally true. I mean, there's lots of other very innovative retail understanding or examples across the world. Obviously, some very sophisticated payment technology and coming out of Asia. And obviously their social commerce is unrivaled, right? That's something that I would say is coming, but building slowly in the Canadian market. And from a tech trends perspective, I mean, there's lots to learn from the various retailers and certainly other large organizations across the globe. And we keep track of what's going on. We're part of various groups, and you keep abreast through reading interesting use cases that people are doing, and then you have to figure out how does it apply to what it is you're trying to do. And like every large organization, we've made investments in the past. You don't have a green field to start from, so you need to figure out is this something we can adapt based on what we already have? Is this something brand new? Is this a tech thing? Is this a process change? This is a mindset change that we need to make. Right. Often, we get locked into our own paradigms, and you need to reframe what it is you're trying to do, and then work with your partners to achieve it. So I'd say it's a combination of many different things.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys have like sensors everywhere and participate in actually understanding how the industry is evolving from organizations all over the world.
Yeah, we have executives from across the globe. They're very well connected. We participate in different retail forums to really understand what's going on across the world, and obviously there are some key trends, the trend to value, right, and to hard discounting, the trend to globalization, that those are all well understood economic trends.
David, there's a whole bunch of questions, as one would expect these days, asking about artificial intelligence and what are you doing with this, and how do you see this impacting your business, and how do you plan to leverage it? Is there anything that you would like to comment on the question around artificial intelligence and how you plan to use it in the context of your business?
I'll say we have, as many organizations do, a number of pilots and a number of projects, around data. Well, again, we've been using our data and analytics, at a fairly substantive level for many years. The artificial intelligence, or over the last 18 months, the Gen AI. That's some techniques or models that we are have deployed and are leveraging in various use cases. I'm not going to get into too many details. I think some of them are at a point where we need to finish the job on them and then launch them to then people sort of see the examples in real life.
Yeah. So in other words, things are progressing, and you're piloting and testing.
I think we're moving in it. The question you always get asked is, are you moving fast enough? And I'd say we're moving at an appropriate pace. We're making sure that anything that we do launch, is sort of free from bias, free from defects, free from some of the challenges that, there's been some fairly public examples where people may have gone too fast. Again, we need to manage risk and making sure that we do a quality job with any product that we launch.
Very good. And a couple of other questions are coming, a consistent theme around digital sort of transformation, digital strategy, and prioritization of tech investments. I would be curious to know, specifically in your environment that you mentioned, it's very competitive, it's low margin, you got to be thoughtful and choiceful about which technologies you can afford to invest in. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? How do you actually make technology investment decisions that you feel are right for the business? And any sort of observations there that you could share?
I think it's a synthesis of what sort of commented on. You're looking on various horizons. I think one thing that you need to always keep in mind, going, let's say, from the shortest to the longest, is finishing the job on what you're already in progress doing. I think being in transition, being in a hybrid or commingled environment is never good for any organization from a technology perspective. So we're trying to be very diligent and relentless around finishing our initiatives on time. That at least gets you to a state where you're done, at least what you'd intended to do. And then you can take a step back and say, sort of on the next horizon, did you achieve the outcomes that you wanted, whether that was from a business or from a tech performance or stability or resiliency perspective? And does the cost or economics of those particular investments hold based on the business case. And then as you look longer term, you have to say, well, do these investments in the various technology capability areas, will they hold true, 3 to 5 years from now? And is there something we need to start investigating now to be ready to make a change or transition? How much would that cost? How much can we get there with our existing partners? Going back to my comment about, can you just adapt what you've got, right? Certainly the tech companies, whether they're hardware, software, cloud, SaaS solutions, they're constantly investing and adapting as well. And you need to sort of understand where those products are going as well. Yeah. And then, that often leads to situations where there's a gap, and then you need to go through a very diligent selection process, which would involve, say, functional capabilities, whether those are business or tech, depending on what kind of product you're evaluating, that would have technical specifications, that you would have a view of how likely you are to be successful with that partner. Do your values, do your working styles mesh? What other successes have they had? Is it something you're going to co-innovate on, right? What's the context? What's the situation? And then you step into it, and you need to make sure that you've properly resourced it and put the right governance and program management around it. And then, you check in regularly to make sure it's progressing as planned. So again, it's a balanced view, right? And you need to stay on top of things. You can't, like I said, getting things done and finishing the job is key to progress.
Yeah. I think although this sounds obvious, I think it's really important what you said. It is really important what you said. I think a lot of IT organizations end up with a very long list of ongoing projects. A whole number of them have perhaps lost the purpose, lost the sponsor, lost the why, but carries on, right? And I think that it is very simple, but a very important observation to make sure that when you finish, you're actually done, that you arrive, finish, close, disband, end the project before you are...
Right. And sustain it, right? I mean, sustain the technology, sustain the process. Yeah. Have some level of, you can't just disband and say that's it. Obviously, it needs to run for a much longer period of time than the project will have been on for. And, are you continuing to get the value over the long term? And that's a function of good specification, operations management, and did you train up your people and your staff to make sure that you're getting the most value from it?
So and the two additional things that you mentioned in your response, which I think are really, really, really important to highlight. Number two thing that you mentioned is, after the work is done, make sure that you come back and to validate, are we actually getting the value that we thought we did? That we were after, right? So making sure that it's not done and we are done, but it's done, we are sustaining it, but coming back to understand, are we actually getting what we have expected? That was really important. And again, I think that many organizations fail to do that. And then the last thing that you mentioned, I think, is also important. Who is your partner? And does your partner share your values? Does your partner understand your culture? Like, that is actually really, really important. So thank you for highlighting those three things. David, I'd love for us to maybe shift towards talk about tech leadership and opportunities in front of Canadian tech leaders. You personally demonstrate a technology executive who is now first and foremost a business executive. And as we know, your mandate goes beyond technology into other business, very core sort of business functions. So I would love for you to sort of reflect on, what do you feel is the actual opportunity for a typical CIO in a typical Canadian company today? When you fast forward 5 years out, how do you see the role of a tech leader, CIO, evolve over the next 5 years, 10 years? Where do you think this is going?
I mean, it's a good question. I think when you used a few generalities there, I don't know if there is a typical CIO or a typical Canadian company. I think everything
That's
that
actually a
you
good
do
point.
needs to be in context, right? And I think that goes down to understanding the business you're in, what role you're being asked to play as a technology leader. And that'll often come down to, what life cycle stage is the company in, what strategy are they pursuing, right? You get asked to wear different hats over a career, from being a low cost operator to a transformation agent to, a strategic visionary to just a good, operator and deliverer of capabilities, projects, and good stable production operations, right? So I think number one is to understand, where is your business at? What is being asked of you? And then to, think through what would it take to play that role effectively? And, how would you measure yourself? How would your peers see that success? And then come up with the right set of metrics and analogies that you can use at the leadership table to help make sure that you're being as valuable as possible to your organization. Now, that doesn't, and that's sort of the outward view, and then inward, you need to understand, where are your strengths and weaknesses, both as a leader, but within your own department. I think you always have to be critical about that. You go through different life cycles, again, in terms of, you could be at this level, at a pretty high level in one capability area, and then you go through a set of initiatives, you get some attrition, and then you lose some of the skill set, and then you're like, well, I can't say that we were just good there before, and stick to that, right? You need to be almost your harshest critic if you're being really honest with yourself. So I think that's another skill, right? This ability to self-analyze and to be critical of where do you need to focus your time and invest and ensure the capabilities and skill set, of your own department, need to be. And then I think, longer term, where is the role going? I think it'll depend, right, on that particular situation, on where that technology leader is in their career life cycle. But there's one thing that certainly I've seen over my career, and that is, if you are a positive contributor to the team, if you are someone who can dig in and help solve problems and be a good collaborator, like there is no boundary that you get constrained within, right? The opportunities will continue to open up for you.
Yeah. I really like how you describe there is an external aspect of the leadership of the role, as in how you show up at the executive table. And then there is an internal aspect of it, which is, do I really understand what is going on within the unit that I lead? How am I spending my time? How do I strategically apportion that time? And I think that between those two, I would say that traditionally CIOs have been really good in focusing on the internal aspects of this, and the opportunity really is to do better with the external, I would say, in general, if I was to if I was to generalize things.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the balance theme that that we've talked about, I think it is, a balance, right? You have to focus on the things that matter, both internally and externally.
Yeah. As the saying goes, the main thing is to keep the main thing, right? And the main thing here is to contribute to the business objectives, I guess, right? So that yeah, that's really it brings it back to that. I have a related question about tech leadership. You have, of course, as we've established, very successful tech executive career. Like, what would you advise your younger self, or what would you say to a 22-year-old listening in, planning to move their career towards tech leadership, tech executive role? Like, what would be your advice to a 20-year-old these days?
I think, and my advice to most people is usually the same, right? You need to work harder than you think you need to, or that you plan to do, and you need to take some risks and push your boundaries into areas that you're uncomfortable with, right? And that could be, learning new tech, that could be in managing people, that could be in, communicating your ideas effectively, right? We all have, especially, when we're younger, we've got things we're really good at. We tend to really focus on those, but
Yeah.
they'll only get you so far. Though, you can always rely on being a good problem solver, or being, a disciplined, someone who can through with discipline execute on projects or keep things organized. Like, those are core skills, but again, they'll only get you so far. You have to be able to sell your ideas. You have to be able to manage people. You have to be able to develop people. You have to be able to make difficult decisions, right? And hold people accountable, have difficult conversations. So whatever those areas of weakness are, the sooner you can identify them and address the ones that are most prevalent at that particular time, the better off you'll be. And then, unfortunately, there'll be a new set of things and development areas that you'll need to step into. And that goes back to you're going to have to work harder, I think, than a lot of people think they need to. I think I work pretty hard, and I've worked hard over the years, and, I always wish I'd worked harder and made better choices.
Wow.
Leaned in more.
Yeah. So work hard. It will be harder than you think. Get ready to work hard. Focus on identifying what are your genuine sort of gaps and work to close those gaps. Learn technology, but also learn people and how to engage with people, how to communicate with people, how to tell the stories, how to build more leaders.
That's a good summary.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I have one last question, if you don't mind. For a person who is as busy as you are, with such a wide, impactful mandate, how do you keep yourself up to date? Like, where do you go to inform yourself about what's coming? Do you have a network of people around you with whom you have ongoing thought leadership discussion, partnership discussions? How do you keep yourself sort of sharp and up to date?
I think there's a few dimensions to that. Like I said, I've got an amazing team, and they're constantly pushing the boundaries in terms of our understanding of different technology areas, what's going on in the industry, and we share a lot from that perspective. Whether it's in our various chat groups or in team meetings. So I think that's one way you can rely on the people around you. I do have a network of peers across, whether it's non-competitive industries or businesses, and we share what's going on. I also try and stay involved outside of Loblaw in sort of the tech community, and whether that's through the innovation ecosystem, with the 111 in downtown Toronto. I also participate on the board of Scale AI out of Montreal, which is one of the government superclusters, and through a set of investment funds in startups. And then there's different other forums that I or my team are a part of, from a retail ISAC, a financial services ISAC, which all provide intelligence or information about what's going on in the industry, and other various forums. And it's just a matter of doing that. Plus, I think doing a lot of reading and synthesizing about what's going on, what's important. What are the macro trends, and where might we not be pushing as hard as we could in an area that really matters.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. It's evident that you are taking this connectedness into the ecosystem very seriously and deliberately. I think that's really great to hear. Like, this is, I think, important for all technology leaders to appreciate the importance of not spending 100% of your time within the boundaries of your organization, but to intentionally reserve some time to be spent connected into the ecosystem that's around us. Thank you so very much. David, this was fantastic. We are at time. We want to be respectful of your time. We've parked 45 minutes for this conversation. This was truly wonderful. You shared some real great sort of gold nuggets of wisdom with me and with our audience. I want to thank you so very much for your time, David, and for this wisdom you shared. And for our audience members, we're going to post the recording of this video so you can review it again or share it with your colleagues and friends. I would like to thank you very much for your time and wish you all a very, very happy and pleasant Wednesday. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.